Salutations everyone. Recently, we've just gotten the latest PTR for Shadowlands' next patch, Chains of Domination. And several characters are getting some much needed love and treatment. Today, I'd like to shine a spotlight on each of them and give my estimate to what is happening quite possibly with each of them. Some theories we've even speculated prior on the channel and have gotten right. As this is the PTR, many things can be changed, added, or removed, so anything I say here could be a bit dated by the time this video comes out. Also, yeah, spoilers, you know the drill, so let's get started, let's go. Tyrande Whisperwind, the elusive Night Warrior and leader of the Night Elves, has been on quite the journey and revenge quest. The last we saw of her, she had jumped right into the portal into the Maw, and in the Underworld campaign, we finally found her and assisted her with freeing the many souls within Torghast. All of them being the souls who died in the War of Thorns, or rather, in Totasil. To which afterwards, Tyrande would continue her road of blood to find and kill Sylvanas Windrunner for all that she's done to her people. Which leads us to where we are now, where the Jailer and Sylvanas' plans are delving into Underworld to take the Winter Queen's sigil, just as they did with the Archon. Something happens there that has yet to be really revealed, but ultimately it looks like Tyrande is gravely injured in the process after fighting Sylvanas, and is recovering right after their bout. I definitely think out of all of the characters in Warcraft right now, Tyrande is the most deserving in killing the Banshee Queen. We know so far that Sylvanas will be the final boss within the raid, and it's very possible that Tyrande will step in to land the killing blow on her. What I think that could be interesting is if Sylvanas is the only one capable of saving or finding Anduin, who so far appears to be missing from the raid entirely. Either because he's dealt with outside of the raid, or Zovol has bigger plans for him. This could maybe lead to Tyrande having to choose between saving Anduin or taking her vengeance on the woman who took away her people and kingdom. Not an easy choice for most, but I could see Tyrande going for the kill there, making things complicated for everyone else. Anduin Wrynn. Speaking of the young Wrynn, he's been going through a lot as of late. Straight after the 4-4 and the successful rebellion against the Dark Lady, Sylvanas had successfully managed to capture Anduin through her Mossworn, and although he escaped, he was quickly captured yet again by Zovol. Sylvanas then tried to sway Anduin to her side with very little results. This ultimately led to the Jailer pushing Sylvanas into converting Anduin immediately, rather than it being his own choice. Once converted, Anduin was then set out on his task to capture the Archon's key, which was a complete success. And that's about all we have on Anduin thus far. However, it's been confirmed that Anduin will eventually escape this fate, but will have several mental scars afterwards, which will definitely affect his leadership decisions whenever it is time to return home, possibly even leading to Anduin just letting Tyrallion hold things over until he's up to it again. As to how Anduin is freed from the Jailer's control, I think it will have to do a lot with Sylvanas doing an ultimate sacrifice of some sort, maybe in freeing him, or simply that the Jailer has no further use for Anduin, and we free him ourselves without Sylvanas' help. I also think it is likely that the Jailer might use Anduin as a means to get to Azeroth. Since the previous Lich Kings were his vessels prior, I wouldn't be shocked if Anduin was used in a similar fashion to make way for Zovol's arrival. Ner'zhul, the first ever Lich King. Ner'zhul was bound to the helm of Domination by Kil'jaeden and the Dreadlords after his many failures on Draenor. We've yet to uncover how the Helm and Frostborn came into the Legion's possession, but it was once something Zovol had crafted with the aid of the Runecarver. He then would have his champion, much later, with Arthas Menethil, don this very helm, and they would become one single entity for a bit, as Arthas would remove a great portion of his humanity and Ner'zhul from himself, ultimately becoming the one true Lich King until his own downfall. We finally get to see what has become of Ner'zhul after he was removed, and it seems as whatever is left of Ner'zhul has been turned into a massive guardian specter of some kind, very reminiscent to Lord Marrowgar, who was the guardian of the Frozen Throne back in Icecrown Citadel. It is very likely that Ner'zhul will play a similar role within the Tower of the Damned, acting as a guardian of sorts. I do think it'd be interesting to see Ner'zhul try and help us, either by supplying us with information during the fight, or after he is defeated, as I do think that this is more of a punishment than an actual reward, as even Zaval himself deemed both Arthas and Ner'zhul as failed vessels, and wasn't too pleased with their own goals or defiances. Uther the Lightbringer. He was a rather integral character to the Bastion storyline, where his death from Frostmourne resulted in his soul splitting in two, one residing in Frostmourne until it was shattered, and the other placed in Bastion. Being stabbed by Frostmourne ultimately led to Uther's soul being corrupted, and had Devos turn her back on the purpose. Together, they would toss Arthas into the maw for what he had done, jump-starting what would later become the Forsworn. Now, Uther ultimately broke away from Devos' plans and has been in the care of the Kyrian, still sporting the purple colors too. We could at last see him drop his Forsworn colors and become Bluther, finally. Or we could see an alternative path for the Kyrian where being a Forsworn isn't perceived as a negative thing anymore, and more so just a "I would like to keep who I am" sort of deal. It would be a very nice thing to see that sort of thing happen, or start to develop, in Bastion, starting with Uther. Now, interestingly, we do have a new human model back when Uther was alive presently. My guess is that we will finally see the two souls from Azeroth and Bastion finally join together, and with no longer being a broken spirit, make their way to right their wrong of throwing Arthas into the maw, potentially leading us to a reunion between teacher and student to finally interact and forgive each other. Or this is more pertaining to a flashback of sorts, or a flash vision, of Uther's past with the Silver Hand, as we do see other members in their youth being data mined as well, which will likely again have something to do with Uther going through his ascendance once more with the Kyrians. We could also potentially see him at last interact with Jaina Proudmoore after so many years, as the two were pretty close once upon a time ago. Garrosh Hellscream. The prideful and tragic Garrosh is making a return. Last we saw from him, he was successful in creating his Iron Horde after escaping from his trials of several war crimes as War Chief. He did this by going to an alternate timeline. Yes, that confusing place. Thrall challenged him to a Makara, with Garrosh ultimately meeting his end fairly. Don't even question me on that. Stop it. Once dead, he would be fated to the realm of Revendreth for all the despicable things he had committed in life, acting as a sort of workhorse and being milked for all his damning anima. Somehow, he likely ended up in the maw through the flooding of anima that Denathris delivered right from Revendreth and into the dang place. Garrosh would find his way right into the Sanctum of Domination, where he would once again be tortured for his anima by a maniacal force. This opens the opportunity for a lot of things, as Garrosh is back, and there's a slight chance for him to escape his fate in the maw and for him to maybe return to Revendreth, or maybe elsewhere, if they're nice enough. One of the things that should be noted is Jaina and Thrall are both present within the Sanctum, which means that they could have a heart-to-heart with Garrosh possibly. I mean, I don't think Jaina has anything nice to say to the man who essentially ruined her life, but Thrall certainly would. Well, kinda. He also kinda meddled with Thrall's affairs there for a little bit there, too. I've been saying this for a while, but with Thrall in Shadowlands, this allows him to meet with the many ghosts of his past, including Garrosh here, meaning they could finally bury the hatchet and settle their differences without throwing hands. It'd be a nice moment for them, as they were once friends. That, or Garrosh will just float off to somewhere. I mean, Nazgrim is around, so maybe they'll have a nice long chat. It's just fascinating to see Garrosh again, and I hope they do something interesting with him. Thrall. As just stated, Thrall makes a rather large appearance and has been given an entirely new one. Now who could have guessed that would happen? Who? Me? Alright, that's enough patting myself. Yes, Thrall is back in the Doomplate and has a bit of his old armor with the wolf pelt here and there. It is also sporting more of the colors of the Frostwolf than it did prior. No longer black and gold, but rather blue and gold. Definitely was more of a fan of the black color scheme, but hey, it's still pretty good. Thrall, much like Jaina, Anduin, and Bane, had been abducted by the Mossworn and was taken into the Tower of Torghast to be converted into one of the jailer's minions. And ultimately, we would help free him from such a fate, and he would lay down a smacking of lightning onto his warden. This is the first time he's been able to wield the elements, to our knowledge, since the Battle of the Broken Shore. Now, Thrall is out and about wearing the Doomplate and everything. At this time, there's no given reason why, but one can hope we see him suit up or something as to why. Like, does he just have the Doomplate sitting in his pocket somewhere? I would like to know why Thrall is just suddenly wearing the Doomplate, please. Hopefully in a cinematic of some kind. But Thrall and Draka also reunite. After all this time, they do this when they go on a mission to kill Virez, the guy who essentially backstabbed Crexus, and killed him. Draka knew exactly who Thrall was when she first saw him, and asks what became of him after she and Durotan fell. Thrall lets her know about how he was once war chief and a powerful shaman, but is unsure what he is now. So Draka gives him some motherly advice, telling him to remember who he once was, but to also take pride in who he is now. Draka feels immense pride for her son, and is excited to see what he will do next. Thrall thanks her and tells her he will do her proud. It's a very touching moment and a moment well earned in my opinion. Obviously, it's something I think we've all been waiting for quite some time now. Now, as stated before, Thrall and Jaina are both present within the raid to bring Sylvanas to justice. And yes, he could interact with the failed shaman Ner'zhul, Garrosh, and etc., but it could be slightly possible that Thrall will take Sylvanas' head to uphold his promise to Tyrande back from their meeting in Mount Hyjal. But I think I would be more open to an all-out brawl of Tyrande, Jaina, Thrall, and Bolvar taking down Sylvanas and letting Tyrande finish her off. That way Thrall at least contributed and is seen fighting alongside his friends again in taking down Sylvanas Windrunner. On a complete final note, it would be also nice for Thrall to pick up the Doomhammer again to match his Doomplate, but I'm not expecting that right away or right now. Mal'Ganis. The Dreadlord that set Arthas down the path of the damned has returned. This lovely Dreadlord has quite a hand in many things. It was Mal'Ganis who led the Scourge within Lordaeron for a time, and ultimately was the one who lured Arthas to Northrend, and was slayed by the Runeblade Frostmourne. He ultimately, though, didn't meet his total end, and he would return and rouse up the Scarlet Crusade to Northrend, under the guise of Bareen Westwind, where his ultimate goal was to get payback on the Lich King for his betrayal, but he would be forced to escape before he could enact on this. We saw him briefly at the Broken Shore amongst the many demons that had returned under Gul'dan, but now we finally know his whereabouts and his allegiance to his one true master. As it turns out, the Nasrazim were creations of Sire Denathrius, and have been acting as agents of the Light, Legion, Void, Life, and so on, creating infighting and chaos within each of the cosmic forces, but their true devotion was to death itself, and to their master, Denathrius. Mal'Ganis returns along with several other Dreadlords in Korthia. Their goal is to ultimately aid in freeing their master, Sire Denathrius, from his prison by distracting us. We don't know Mal'Ganis' own fate, but I would wager he either dies to us or escapes to be dealt with at a later date. Some have even wondered if Arthas may play a role in hunting him down to enact the very words he told him at Stratholme. I personally would prefer if either Uther and or Jaina would work together to bring down Mal'Ganis with us, as this was the entity who ultimately led Arthas astray and manipulated him into becoming a pawn for the Scourge. Honestly, it's pretty cool to see the Dreadlords again, and I'm curious to see what sort of role they and Denathrius play in the future. The Runecarver. Finally saving best for last, the Runecarver, whom has been imprisoned by the jailer, has a primary role and will at last escape his prison. The Runecarver is a master smith who was responsible for the creation of our legendaries, the jailer's own weapons and armor, and Frostmourne and the Helm of Domination. We, along with the apprentice of the Primus, Hamir, who is a forger in her own right, journey to have the Sigil of Maldraxxus repaired, and it is believed that the Runecarver might be able to do so. But something great happens when he takes hold of said sigil. The Runecarver regains his memories and reveals himself to be the long-lost Primus. That's right, we among others were right about the Runecarver's identity. Hell yeah. No doubt that the Primus himself, who is an entity of tactical skill, will play quite the crucial role within the story, but it's nice to see this theory come to light, as it just added up and made sense. I believe that the Primus will ultimately aid us in either defeating Zovol once and for all by either imprisoning him again, or by repairing the Helm of Domination, which will very likely and hopefully remove the rift above Icecrown. This also means we'll get to see his return to his realm of Maldraxxus, which has been in turmoil ever since he left it. As stated with Thrall, both him and Draka are successful in taking out the final corrupted Margrave, who turned his back on the Primus' ideals. For Draka's efforts, she is named Margrave of the Chosen. Considering that Draka has been named Margrave, it stems to reason that a new Baron will be placed under her, as well as other Barons like Vashj, who will also likely take up such responsibilities in the future. Definitely awesome to see the Primus recognizing who's been holding the fort in his stead and reward it properly. But that's all I have to say for now about all these fantastic characters playing a role in the next patch. I'm definitely excited to see what they all have to do, and I'm hopeful that some of these things I said will happen. But what do you guys think? Will Tyrande get her kill? Will Thrall finally get back the Doomhammer? Will people finally stop saying Garrosh did nothing wrong? You tell me in your guys' thoughts down below. Support me on various links in the description, or by going to my Patreon like these amazing folks here. But until next time, my friends, see ya!